Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 193, recorded for December 21st, 2022. The Cloud Pod was less productive in 2022. Good evening, Ryan and Jonathan.
Hey, Justin.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, happy holidays to you both. Our last show for 2022. We're taking next week off, so enjoy your time off. And we'll be back the first week of January with a new show and see what happened over Christmas break, which I assume will be slow, other than Amazon will announce like 100 new what's new posts about things that we don't care about as they're kind of looking at it. So it's been a fun year. It's been busy. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to take some R&R and to relax and wind down this year before we all spin up again for 2023. And we have lots of plans ahead for the Cloud Pod. We did some first this year. We live streamed reInvent. That was fun. We had some new guests. We did lots of different things. So it's great. Peter, unfortunately, couldn't make it tonight due to family obligations that he told us about 10 minutes before the show. So thanks, Peter. We appreciate it. As always, consideration is appreciated. So we have no prediction for him. So we don't, next year we'll be laughing at him and reminding him of the fact that he was not here for a prediction show.
Maybe we should look for him. Yeah.
It'll be funny though if he didn't make a prediction and then by the end of next year we realize that nothing really happened in cloud. He wins by default.
Yeah. The prediction is nothing amazing will happen in cloud for 2023. Yeah.
Well, the chip shortage and imminent global war. Yeah, I can see why innovation might be stunted slightly.
Yeah, although they are saying chip shortages are starting to lift, and we're seeing with the crypto falling through the floor thanks to FTX. Chips are suddenly available in high end computing again. So that's a nice change of pace from 2021 and 2020, where you couldn't get that stuff for months at a time.
Yeah, they can't give them away anymore.
Yep. I've seen some of the computer sellers are saying that they won't return. You can't return video cards anymore because they're like, no, we're not taking them back. You bought them, you're yours. You now own them. Well, it was a relatively quiet week, but there was some interesting general news stories that we talk about before we get into our 2022 look back and 2023 predictions. So first up, Salesforce founder and CEO Marc Benioff said in an internal chat room on Slack that new employees hired during the pandemic in 2021 and 2022 are especially facing much lower productivity. Then he asked a bunch of open-ended questions about, is this a reflection of their office policy? Are they not building tribal knowledge employees? And they have, up to this point, been very much on the hybrid work side of the equation, saying they're going to be a hybrid first workforce. Although they did, after their latest earnings miss, start calling some employees back into the office at least a few days a week. I did take a look at it because I was curious. Pre-pandemic, Salesforce had 35,000 employees and now has 73,000. Maybe that's part of your lower productivity.
Wow.
Just going to say, when you have that many more people to coordinate and work together, there's a lot more expense in the machine in some ways. So what do you guys think about this? Are lower productivity, is that what you guys are seeing in your teams for 2022 and 2021, the new hires?
I can speak for myself and say that this is the first job transition I've made where I've not gone to an office to be onboarded and not gone and met a team in person every day for months before transitioning to working from home. And it is definitely difficult. It's much slower to find things. It's much more difficult to reach people. You don't bump into people and sort of make friends quite so easily, or make acquaintances at least. So I definitely think that the different type of social interaction has a huge effect on especially onboarding new employees. I also think it's been a very stressful couple of years. I mean, the constant threat of deadly illnesses going around is and the change in people's sort of life routines. Kids sent home from school if they got a sniffle. It's been difficult to be a good employee sometimes, I think.
Mm-hmm. And if you think about there's just that it's if you're blocked because you don't know the answer to a question, you don't know who to reach out to, like you're just going to step away, right? There's no way to really, when you're in an office, you're at least looking around morosely and someone hopefully will take pity on you. But, that's just, it's not as easy. And so you have to wait a lot of teams are distributed globally, so sometimes you're waiting for someone to wake up that you can ask a question. So it makes sense. I do think that, like most large trends, the reaction to this will be pretty swift. I don't think it'll be a full rollback of like, okay, back in the office, right? I think it's going to be focus at many levels of the enterprise on that onboarding process, on putting the documentation that someone needs in place, and then also creating much more conduits for internal communication that's more social and centralized. I hope Teams is listening and they figure out their user management within the Teams construct, and either make chats a real boy or where that can be targets to automation, or figure out how to fix the limits. So, because it's completely stifling right now in my day job.
Yeah. There's lots of things in Teams that are stifling to my day job. So, access is one of many problems with it. But it would be nice to have them fix some of those fundamental issues. But it's Microsoft, so they're never going to listen to their customer. That's the thing about Microsoft, is that you never feel listened to unless you pay them, $500 million a year. Then all of a sudden you're a big important customer to them. But any reasonable size enterprise, they're like, yeah, here's our overpriced support that won't help you, and best of luck to you. But I also wonder if some of the Salesforce's problems are that they've got a lot of tech debt, they've got a lot of complexity, they're kind of stagnated on the cloud migration to AWS. I know they're trying to do multi-cloud as well. Salesforce is a beast. It's a complicated product that's been around for a long time now, and is it just sort of slowing down on its own just based on the complexity, the fact that customers on their side don't want change as fast anymore, and they just and then you add in the pandemic factors to it, and the number of people, and a bunch of processes that probably aren't scaling well. Like it's just so many things that are probably impacting Salesforce that are beyond the pandemic. But it's easy to blame the pandemic, and work from home is your first blame. Well, we have been playing with it quite a bit here at the Cloud Pod, but all these new Chat GPT, Chat AI playgrounds, all from OpenAI are taking the world by storm. And there was a great article in the information about the cottage industry of bot builders exploding around side of Chat GPT. It's a huge investment area, potential big value. We're seeing startups apparently investing in low code, no code solutions around Chat AI services, and how you could do process automation that way. And so there's potentially a huge market industry coming around this. But of course, they don't pay for any of this yet, because OpenAI hasn't quite figured out how to monetize any of it. And that's going to be an interesting reality of, like, does this become a cloud service that is consumed by cloud? And Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, said he tweeted, "We'll have to monetize it somehow. At some point, the compute costs are eye-watering," which is what I say every time I see my cloud bill. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I saw somebody do an estimate based on the number of users and the number of queries and the compute time required to run the model, and it was in the order of $1 million plus a day in compute. But look at the free advertising they're getting out of this.
Oh yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's just mind blowing. And we were talking before you arrived in the chat thing earlier, Ryan, about how if you could bring along unit tests and data in and what data you expect out, you can automate the entire process of writing the code and testing the code. And if it fails, it goes back and tries again. If it passes, then great. It's taken you 30 seconds to write something. It's sort of getting into the Star Trek realm of automation.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's some of the stuff, as we were playing around over the last few days, like that was coming out of these bots, like, is really just astounding, right? Like, it's super cool. And then immediately, like, also terrifying, right? Like, it's like more mostly fear of the unknown, but it's just like, it's really good, right? And so knowing humans, like, it's, there's going to be abuse out there, and there's going to be things. And I worry when the prices are so high for this compute, that the temptation to monetize this by influencing the models to, like, you can, like, a pay to play sort of thing where you can direct different things in the AI model and that stuff. And I just, it's going to sort of muddy the waters and what it can do.
Yeah, what I hope doesn't happen is first they make it free and easy, and a bunch of people lose their jobs because now you can write software in the blink of an eye, and then all of a sudden it becomes very expensive. And now we don't have teams of software developers, and we're dependent on this service, which now costs a fortune. And instead of paying engineers, we're paying for the evil compute bot in the sky.
Yeah.
But I was talking to somebody earlier to sort of dissuade them from going into software engineering as a role, and I gave this ChatGPT as an example, and literally right in front of her, I said, "Look, we'll ask it to write a Python program to upload documents from your documents folder to Amazon S3 every day at a predetermined time," and it was spot on with comments and everything.
Really? Like it generated all the code?
It tells you, walks you through step by step exactly what it's going to do. It sets up the virtual environment, it installs Boto and the scheduler module, writes the function to upload. It's just mind blowing.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about all the time the problem with low code, no code that we were complaining about is that the gap between those solutions and then the bespoke development that you typically would need when you hit the edge cases is, mountains of distance. But with this, you can see how all of a sudden, okay, well, now I just have to tell the computer what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take this object, I'm trying to transform it into something else. And then the computer can determine what type of code to write for that. It's really potentially interesting time. Like, is the era of the software development, going to change dramatically? Yes, it's going to change. And you even seen it with some of the Git services and some of the code stuff from Amazon, with the automation and autocompletes and stuff like that. It's been getting better for a while. And so it'll be interesting to see how it impacts. Luckily, I'm on the cloud side, and you have to see the ChatGPT figure out how to make cloud work better. So I think we're okay for a little bit. But definitely it's going to be interesting to see how things evolve in the next 20 years, 30 years. Are software developers a thing in 30 years from now? I don't know.
So in the light round, I had ChatGPT write a joke for me.
Yeah.
Nice. Let me know. Let me know if you guess which one. Right. But I mean, the caveat to the whole thing is that it's great at redoing things that it's already learned and already seen. It has no imagination. And so if somebody makes a new Python module or a new service or a new function, it doesn't know about that, and it won't do for another 6 to 12 months after they've spent another $5 million retraining the model. And so I think, although it doesn't be very helpful in the short term for writing a lot of the boilerplate type stuff, I think once we get into very specific use cases, it'll still require people to go in and add the finishing touches. Hand finished, I think, is the phrase.
Well, even in the the writing prompts we gave it, like I was joking and I prompted like write a sassy resignation letter or something like that. And like you read it, like after you've read a few of those type of things that you've given it, they all start to sort of sound the same. They're very non-specific and very much, you can tell they're somewhat written by a machine at some point, right? They're missing a piece of humanity to them. Which I think kind of gives them away a little bit. So I suspect that as we get more familiar with them, we'll also be able to see them more clearly when we're like, oh, this is a bot. Like I can tell just the way it's not a normal interaction. But maybe it gets better over time, and maybe I'm wrong, and we have no idea. But at least what I've seen so far, when it does art or it does write the story or tells you a joke, they all have a sort of pattern, a sort of cadence to them, which is a common ones, but like they just are missing something. They're missing that piece that pushes them over the edge.
Mm-hmm. And I think with it, like any technology improvement, right? It's not like it's going to completely replace. Like there'll be no software developers. No, the software developers will be more focused on something very specific, right? And it's the same thing. Like cloud has introduced a whole lot of stuff where we're not spending nearly as much time on infrastructure and network and running fiber. It's specialized that to providers, and it's going to be a very similar sort of transition, I think, where the amount of time spent integrating internal systems and creating glue code for things will be drastically reduced. But core product development, maybe they're enabled to do bigger and better things, hopefully.
Well, have you guys heard of a little single sign-on company called Okta, perhaps?
Once or twice.
Yeah. They've had a rough year. I think they like just erase 2022 off the boards completely. Starting early in the year with the Lapsus claiming that they had hacked Okta's admin console through a phishing campaign, which they apparently did. And their poor handling of all of that. They are now back in the news again because apparently they leaked their internal source code through GitHub. Their private GitHub repositories were hacked earlier in the month. Bleeping Computer obtained a confidential security incident notification that Okta has been emailing to its security contacts this morning. And we have confirmed that multiple sources, including IT admins, have been receiving this email notification. Okta says that they do not rely on the confidentiality of their source code as a means to secure its services, and so no customer data was impacted, which that's a stretch, because if I have the source code, I can figure out where you might have a flaw or you're not properly exception handling something, and now I have an attack vector that I wouldn't have known about if I didn't have your source code. So I don't know if I completely agree with that statement, but it's interesting. I did check the Okta blogs and the Okta security stuff, and it's not on their public website. So again, still haven't really learned how to disclose things properly.
I just hope that the previous hack isn't what allowed this hack to happen months later. You know, somebody forgot to change the admin account password for GitHub, or that a user wasn't created at the time during that hack when that laptop was compromised.
Yeah,
because that would be some serious egg on their face.
And even if it is like the same method of attack, right? Like, you know, it's not the same exploit, but like it's another social engineering sort of phishing attempt or something like that. Like that sucks, right? Like, because that's just culturally, what's that going to do to the employees, and it's just, I hate how brutalized and how aware you just have to be these days, because it's, you know, I get several phishing attempts, and you know, most of them hilariously blatant, but a week now, and it's just like something you have to be really, really aware of, because if a good one comes through, like it's really easy.
Well, I take it back. They did put a post on their website finally.
Yeah.
You know, again, hours later after it already on the news. They said the security event detail below pertains to Okta Workforce Identity Cloud code repositories. It does not pertain to Auth0, although that happened earlier in the year, by the way. Auth0s were exposed. And apparently GitHub alerted Okta about possible suspicious access to the Okta code repositories. And that's when they investigated to determine that, yes, their code had been downloaded by a third party, and that they have now rotated all their GitHub credentials, and they are putting controls in place to prevent this from happening again. You think after a breach of potentially the size of Lapsus, you think that security would be getting properly funded, though? So this wouldn't be an issue.
It's not like they don't charge enough.
I mean, the flip argument is that it's also really easy, because it could just be as simple as, you know, someone getting their GitHub password compromised, right? And using an active session somehow.
I mean, it's true. It could be a phishing attack again. It could be, you know, it could be credentials, you know, got sniffed by some other process or some other, you know, there's all kinds of ways they could have gotten there. So, all right, let's move on to 2022 predictions. So a year ago, about this time, I don't remember when we recorded it, you guys made predictions about what you thought was going to happen in 2023. And I made one too. And we did not so great. So
if we ever done great, I don't think we have.
Ryan, you predicted that Google would build the first data center region under the sea.
Sounds like something I would say.
Yeah. I mean, you were clearly drinking at the time. So it's fine.
Obviously.
Well, with climate change, maybe we'll revisit this prediction in a few years' time, and it will be under the sea.
Yeah, but not for the reasons I was originally intending.
I know, technicality.
I mean, it could still happen. Like, I could see this is still, I mean, even when you made this prediction at the time, I was like, well, that's a little crazy, but also not incredibly implausible, because Microsoft did it. So why can't Google do it? Mm-hmm. Jonathan, you predicted that Amazon release a new database service, going for that wide swing, and you still missed, because as far as I can remember, Amazon did not release any new database service. And we were talking about it before the show that, you know, yes, they announced some serverless things, but they're just extensions of existing database technology, so we won't count those. Like Neptune serverless didn't get you what you wanted. I still think this problem needs to get solved, but someone is going to solve the issue of designing apps that stretch from the cloud edge to the availability zone via SDK or programming tools. That doesn't exist as far as I'm aware in any serious way. I still think it's a problem. I still, you know, if someone wants to fund me on some startup dollars, I would maybe invest in this. And then Peter, who's not here, he said that Fortune 500 companies will continue to avoid an all-in-one single cloud vendor strategy in 2022, which I had a very compelling argument earlier in the year on a cloud court case that I feel like I rested my case on this, that he is wrong. And he's not here to argue with me about it right now, so he's still wrong. So we have seen the language be changed a little bit from being, you know, all in, but to preferred cloud, which is basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, but it is interesting because it's the, to argue in Peter's absence, the language change in itself, just the fact that they felt required to change it is, a thing to me, because it is sort of like that's exactly what the intent behind that message is. It's like, we don't want to say we're going all in one. We no longer think that a one cloud strategy makes sense. So we're gonna have a preferred one, which is the same thing. I agree with you, but we're no longer messaging the same. So it's
a strange message to make, I think, in that it limits you automatically to. I mean, if you were to abide by what you said in the press release, that you were all in on one cloud, it limits you to that particular services set of products. And there are good services from Azure, and there's good services from GCP and AWS. To limit yourself that way is probably not the best choice.
It's bad business, yeah. And the reality behind these things is that it's not technological driven. It's not driven by anything other than business, right? There's money to be had. There's cost to be offset by public announcements and press releases and partnerships. So that's why these things aren't abided to. I think once the announcement's made is because the technology choices will drive it in the end. And if you can make a business case, it's always going to trump whatever you've previously said.
Agreed. Well, it's time for 2023 predictions, and I will ask you both to roll the dice in our chat room. I just rolled to give you the syntax, but I rolled an 8.
Oh, so you've won already.
I mean, 8's, I know, Jonathan's higher.
Never mind.
You got 12.
So I can tie.
And you got 3. All right.
I did not tie.
It's Jonathan, me, and then Ryan. So,
it's a good
Jonathan,
job, buying lottery tickets.
Why don't you give us your 2023 prediction? See how your crystal ball is this year. See if you can pull out a win for next year. And then when Peter's back, we'll force him to give us a prediction.
So my prediction is that Microsoft will release in preview an Azure branded customizable version of the OpenAI ChatGPT service.
Microsoft, huh?
That makes sense. I mean, I can see that happening. They're pretty big in AI and research. They have some partnerships with some other AI. I don't think it's OpenAI, is it?
It is. Microsoft's invested a lot of money.
Yes. So maybe that's one way they can get that money back is a joint partnership, or they just buy Chat AI and say we're not going to own you as part of our Azure thing. So I can see that happening in multiple different ways. So.
My rationale for that was that Microsoft are already investors in OpenAI. They have potentially the scale of compute to be able to monetize the service at the scale it needs to sort of be of value and pay for itself. Whereas OpenAI, they don't have data centers; they're running in the cloud.
I mean, considering we're going to talk about favorite announcements a little bit, like Azure was hard for me to find anything that I thought was good.
Oh, I got a good one.
Okay, I have a few that I thought were good.
Yeah, I came up with,
but I did struggle trying to find a good Azure announcement. So if they announce a ChatGPT thing, that would be a good one. So that'd be nice. All right, so I'm not going to use this one, but ironically enough, I did say this will be the year Azure wakes back up from COVID and starts doing real innovation. So sort of related to what you said, but. So I think this year we're going to see a much bigger push on data sovereignty, continue to force multi-cloud in a pretty heavy-duty way, and that we'll see true multi-cloud security, DevOps, and observability tooling come out as a specialization and really the driver of that, and a resistance against cloud-native tools for those things.
Are there any existing products that support multi-cloud?
There definitely are companies that are kind of they support multi-cloud, but it's not their big selling pitch right now. Laceworks, for example, on cloud security posture management, Palo Alto, Prisma. But there was the sort of push for those doing multi-cloud products. And they're all really specialized in like AWS or Azure, and then everything else is kind of an afterthought. And I think you're going to see just a really strong drive towards really good tooling and this ability that you want single panes of glass across multi-cloud. So maybe that's the right way I should say it. Data sovereignty will drive single pane of glass across multi-cloud.
That's interesting because you see right now the providers are clearly in a rush to get the regions in place to support this, right, themselves, right? Because that's how they want you to tackle this, right? Don't use a third party necessarily, but you can have your data localized by deploy into one of our many regions in native. So,
but there are some places that they're just not going to support multiple hypervisor clouds, right? Like Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. It's going to be hard for them to have more than a few of these because they don't have the power infrastructure, they don't have the cooling infrastructure to do that. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is another one where, again, like our probably the total addressable market's a few $100 million. You're not going to have enough revenue there to support Google and Azure and GCP. Sorry, AWS.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
So I think you're going to get to the point where you're going to see more tools like the BigQuery Omni from the big providers. And then you're going to see third parties really driving a unification story around how do I unify this visibility across your clouds? All driven by data sovereignty is the big force.
Well, I think that's the thing that's going to bite you and lose the point. Because I do think that you're going to see multi-cloud, because I see it already happening. Multi-cloud is the new public cloud, right? But data sovereignty driving it.
I mean, in some ways,
we'll see how you finagle a point out of that one.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm going to tack a small prediction onto your prediction, which is that it will be a very expensive service, because the types of enterprises that need that type of thing are going to be the Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and not startups.
Yeah. Deep pockets.
Yeah.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
All right, Ryan, what's your 2023 prediction?
We are going to see just a complete influx of all of the AI that's going on now and the no-code solutions. And so you're going to see almost in every website that you're supposed to user interaction, you're going to see this sort of no-code solutions being directly exposed to people as part of their services. When you think about, software as a service being sort of where companies going, if companies like Atlassian, like that are removing support for their on-premises offerings, you're going to start seeing integration abilities become very native and very strong in a lot of places. So yeah, it's already becoming sort of ubiquitous in places I didn't expect it. But it's like one of those things. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you see it everywhere. And like that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I got even in the article they were talking about some company that helps you lower your bills, and they were using ChatGPT to basically contact Comcast and go through the call prompt process to basically get this person's bill lowered by $10. And even Google a couple of years ago, if you remember right, they did the Google Voice thing where they would call the restaurant and make a reservation for you even if they didn't take reservations. So there's definitely you're going to see more purveyance of that for sure. So I'm putting that down as an influx of the AI and no-code solution convergence.
It's pretty close to what I wrote down, and it's more generic than what I said, so I like it.
Did you ever use the restaurant booking service from Google?
I never did.
I did.
Yeah.
And
how was it?
It worked really well. And when I walked, it was Mellows here in town, and we walked in there. I'm like, "Hi, I'm Jonathan." And everyone was like, "Wow, we got this phone call from Google." It was it was novel.
Little celebrity.
Yeah. I was like, "Oh,
nice.
Cool."
And you never used it again after that?
And I've never used it again.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, let's talk about our favorite announcements. And I reversed the order from the predictions. That means, Ryan, you're first on your favorite announcements.
I mean, my favorite announcement has got to be Code Catalyst. I mean, for me, it's the panacea that I've been trying to build for years, and to see it sort of servicified and real is excellent. It's still early days. It is very bare bones, but I believe that like Cloud Catalyst and that experience is going to become the new developer experience.
Yeah, I was reading a Twitter feed today about it, and I didn't realize Emily Freeman was heavily involved in it.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
in its development.
In the development of it, yeah. So
that makes sense.
I did post it in our host room, so if you check it out, you'll see a Twitter thread that I posted just for you.
Excellent.
On this particular topic, because I knew you were curious about it. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. Yeah, no, this is also on my list as a potential option that I did not end up using because you took it.
Yeah, it was one of my options too, because I like the engineering part of it. I like writing the code and doing the fun stuff, setting up pipelines, and that's for the birds.
So I have 3 because I'm overachiever. So I'm going to give my Amazon one first, since you give an Amazon one. So mine is the Lambda Snap Start. I think is probably one of my favorite announcements from AWS this year. I had a couple other good ones from them too, but that one, even though it's only Java right now, and I know that's a boohoo, like the potential for them to add more languages to it very quickly over the next 6 months is there. And if they do that, I think it's going to be amazing for Lambda and really Lambda functions in general.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty neat.
Oh, yeah. All right, Jonathan, what's your prediction?
So my favorite announcement was also from reInvent, which was the VPC lattice, because you no longer require VPC peering for service-to-service communication. It's a purely application layer network, completely abstracts all the network complexity away from microservice communication in the cloud. And it's been like a long time coming, and it's going to completely revolutionize how easy it is to deploy complex apps on AWS.
They have announced pricing, by the way, for Lattice.
Ooh, I hadn't.
So basically, it is priced on 3 dimensions. Service itself, which is a service independently deployable unit of software that deploys a specific task or function that runs on instances, containers, or serverless compute. After service provision in VPC Lattice, you're charged for each hour or partial hour that is running. Data processing charges are, of course, there as well, per gigabyte of data transferred through each service. And they compute this by adding the amount of data in each HTTP request that service receives and corresponding HTTP response that it sends to the client. And the price per gigabyte varies by region. And then the number of requests clients in the service network communicate with service by using the HTTP protocol that requires clients to send requests. Services provide a response after evaluating the requested business logic. The number of requests that service receives is tracked hourly, and you are charged for requests when they exceed the always free tier for a given hour. And that also varies per region. So US East is 25 cents per hour for the service. The data processing charge is 2.5 cents per gigabyte, and you pay 10 cents per 1 million requests. You get 300,000 free requests per hour for that regardless. So I don't know if they're cumulative or if it's just all, only that hour accounts and you don't get any cumulative benefit there. But that's the way it's priced. Most expensive region is basically one of the Asia Pac regions. So like Tokyo is 3.25 cents per hour, and 3.25 cents per gigabyte, and 13 cents per million requests. So it's not massively more expensive, but it is more expensive.
Well, the real kicker will be the price layered upon the other prices that you're already paying on top, right? Because that's really think about, gateways and inter-region traffic and all that stuff also has its own charges.
It doesn't support any kind of multi-region connectivity, but from those prices, you deduct the cost of transit gateway and VPC peering and private endpoints and things that you're paying for right now to solve these exact same problems. And so I would think it's
good.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You're gonna end up with both.
We don't need both.
I know you don't need both.
Are you telling me we'll start migrating to the service and realize there's one thing that just won't work with it because it's not HTTP or
that
gRPC?
I've never seen that use case. I know.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my favorite.
Nice. It's a good one. I think it's early days for Lattice. We'll see how it all plays out, but super excited about it still. Ryan, you said you might have come up with a second announcement.
Well, one of them, was VPC Lattice. And so the second one, I'm looking for the specific one, which, because it's more of a general sort of, what I like about it is part of a general overall flow, but it's the step functions increase parallelization Really what I like is just the trend towards the orchestration of serverless apps. It's starting to really mature and be really usable to configure workflows across, and starting to see, some pretty good investment in that area and that orchestration. And, that's, I think, also, closely, included in the Lambda functions and that sort of improvements that you're getting at the execution as well. So it's pretty good.
So I do think the parallelization was a 2021 feature. So I'm going to give you this other one.
So this is the one I was talking about. I just said the wrong.
This is the MapReduce you have to.
The workflow observability features. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sub functions. Okay,
this is
that's what I thought you might be thinking of. So that's why I'll just give you correct. This one. I had it on my list as well. So I had it. All right. Let me go to Azure. And I was really excited about this Azure story about the collaboration with Red Button for attack simulation testing. And I still think, for people who buy all this DDoS software and all this money, the ability to actually test it and actually feel confident in your strategy for that is really important. And if DDoS threats keep you up at night, the ability to go out and test it and actually say, yes, this works, I think is a way to get better sleep. And so, there was slim pickings from Azure in general. And so this one, when I was going through the list of all of our stories for the year, this one that jumped out at me. It's like, oh yeah, I remember liking it when it came out, and I still like it now 6 months later. So that's my Azure item.
You're right. Definitely very, very slim pickings.
Yes. Jonathan.
My Azure story was the firewall advisor, where it would evaluate your rule sets and look at the traffic patterns and help you optimize the firewall rules for better performance. And it sounds like something that we shouldn't have to worry about in cloud, because we like to think that everything's managed for us, and regardless of how we configure a service, it'll always work at its optimal way. But we know that's not true. We know that this is just a facade on top of all the old networking gear that we ever used to have. And so to actually expose a way to optimize something in that way was kind of interesting to me as a diehard techie. We know that there are limits. There's a limit of 100 rules in a security group, and yes, you can make it bigger, but there's a penalty in evaluation of those rules for all your traffic. So to actually sort of admit that yes, there are good ways and bad ways to use these things, and give you a way to help make it better, I was just kind of impressed.
All right, Ryan, back to you for your last one.
Well, that was one I was thinking, because I think I know which one you were going for there, as far as, so I'm going to pivot. I'm trying to choose between, but I think, I'm going to go with, there's the Source Protect for Cloud Code announcement by GCP. And so that announcement is, the Source Protect is a plugin you put in your native IDE, and it's going to give you real-time feedback on security issues and vulnerable dependencies and license reporting. Because this historically right now is done with, static code analysis and the CI/CD pipeline, which is awfully late when you've, included an open source library that has a vulnerable dependency and all of your code is around it. It's just a heavy investment. And so I think that's getting this exposure directly into the IDE, into the developer interface is a super great announcement. And, I struck out looking for anything for Azure. So like this, it was not a lot there. Even some of the Google stuff was sort of an extensions on stuff they've already built. So I think it was a mellow year in general.
I just think Azure has just not woken up from anything from the pandemic. They're just sort of, really not hitting it up. So, all right. Well, then that takes me to, I believe, Google as well. So let me see if I can figure out a Google one that I like. So I had a couple, but I think I'm going to go for these two because they're related to each other. And that is they acquired Mandiant and Simplify to dramatically increase their security operations and incident response. And so I think I'm excited for what the future of security at Google looks like from those investments. So it's a little bit early to say they're my favorite, but like the fact that they did it showed a big investment in security that I've always wanted AWS to do. And so I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I looked at that one, but I went for a more sort of product related techie thing, because they haven't really monetized that in any sensible way yet, have they? Obviously,
No,
they're making
I
money.
mean, they just, I
customers
mean,
still.
the Mandiant deal just closed like a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen some roadmap conversations what they're planning to do, and there's really cool stuff coming. But yeah, it's not here yet.
All right.
All right,
Well-
Jonathan, your third and final favorite prediction.
Yeah. Well, my third and final for GCP was the second generation cloud functions, which sort of gave us increases in concurrency function. It increased the size of the instances to it's like 16 gig of memory and 4 vCPUs, and runtime of up to an hour, which is great for event-driven data processing. And also, I think my sort of favorite feature of that, though, is that they provided a way to do canaries, by traffic splitting between old functions and new functions, to make rolling forwards and backwards easier and testing easier if you were using this event-driven architecture.
Awesome. If you have that one, you can post that one in here too, because I don't know that one's out of the notes. That's awesome. Yeah, overall, you know, AWS and GCP, good solid year. Azure, you have work to do. Like, I mean, there was several weeks this year I was, you know, scrolling through the list of all of our show note archive, and you know, we didn't have a story for Azure, or the story was dumb, like in comparison to what we were seeing coming out of, you know, but with Charlie Bell coming online, he's been there a year now. You know, there are big investments they've supposedly been making in some of the, you know, the different capabilities. Like, they got to do something, man. They can't just live on top of the bundle forever for Office 365 to grow revenue. So they need to do something. All right, well, let's head up some last minute year out closeout stories here. First up, in AWS land, S3 security changes are coming in April of 2023. Starting in April, Amazon will change the defaults around your S3 security. The changes will push their current best practices for bucket security automatically. The change will begin to take effect in April, and we roll out to all AWS regions within a week. So basically, if you've been creating all your buckets in the console with ClickOps, you have already been impacted by this. So this isn't really for you. But this basically automatically enables, by default, the S3 block public access and access control list disabled, which are two of the main ways that people get their S3 bucket compromised because they don't understand what either of those things are. This has been in the default of the console for a while, like I mentioned, but now become the default in the S3 API, the S3 CLI, the AWS SDK, and the CloudFormation implementation of buckets out of the box. So if you don't specify the parameters, you'll now get a more secure by default parameter, which I think is a nice change. And actually, this is something I would like to see Amazon do more of, because I think a lot of their defaults, if you don't give them parameters, are very open.
Yeah, especially the differences between the UI experience and the API. You know, because this announcement was news to me because I thought it was default, and so I think I've actually deployed public buckets not knowing, which is even more startling.
Which is not great, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that kind of bugs me about this, so I absolutely agree with the drive for better security and better awareness around security, and I think it should probably have always been a security first closed bucket, which you had to open explicitly. But I mean, it was designed to be to host websites, so I can kind of see how they ended up in this position. But at the same time, they're still kind of breaking this contract that we have with them, that this piece of CloudFormation will work in perpetuity and provide a repeatable experience. And it's going to break a bunch of stuff for a lot of people. And they had the option to version CloudFormation documents differently. They could have bumped the version of CloudFormation, for example, so that if you use the previous version of the schema, you got the old experience. And if you use the new version of the schema, you get the new experience. But they didn't do that. I'm a bit disappointed.
Yeah, and it's only still dated with the version. The date's like still at 2011 or something. Yeah. Like it's crazy to me that they don't take advantage of that more.
Yeah, it's I definitely have always wondered about that date in CloudFormation. It's like a 2012 date, isn't it not?
Yeah, it's something I can't remember the exact, but it's 2011, 2012.
It's forever old, and you sort of are like, what is the point of this thing? So yeah, you're right. You could have versioned it. You could have given us a new version of the template that you would then know it's a breaking change. Yeah, it is a sort of interesting choice.
I feel like there's some tech debt.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't a version at the CloudFormation sort of level, they could figure out a way of versioning objects within CloudFormation so that you could always get the experience that you used to have.
Well, the other thing about this too is it's only impacting new buckets, so it doesn't go back and change existing buckets either.
Right.
So it's also that confusion of like, well, this worked last week, but now all of a sudden this week it doesn't work when it flips. So it'll cause people to have some heartburn, I'm sure.
September 9th, 2010 is the date. In the documentation, it says it defines the capabilities of the template. This is the latest template format version and is currently the only valid value.
Yes.
So there is something behind the scenes that really requires that. And it's clearly
if you try to change it ever, it'll blow up.
It's clearly not a version control thing, even though it's called template format version.
Yeah.
You'll probably find out some secret version you can deploy with access to new stuff.
Just brute force it, Jonathan. Just write a script that just rolls through.
September 10th, September 11th, September 12th.
Well, if you are an ECS user like I am, you have probably noticed that there's a new console that you could opt into, and you opt in, and then you opt right back out. And unfortunately, you'll no longer have the ability to opt in or opt out because the new default will be the new console, which is sort of unfortunate for me, just because I feel like the new console is still missing things, or like things are hidden because I can't quite figure out where they put them. So I'm just going to have to learn it the hard way. But some of the enhancements apparently coming to the new ECS console, for those of you who like a guided deployment experience, that's now part of the WYSIWYG of the new console. So again, just going to use more Terraform. It's all powered by CloudFormation under the hood. So when you do things in the new console, it does generate CloudFormation that you can get access to. It does support all the new accessibility things. It supports dark mode. And has all the unified settings to cross all of your compute instances, browsers for this. So that's unfortunate. January, I will be cursing the console when I am in it.
So is it kind of like the new Route 53 experience for ECS?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember when they first did the new EC2 instance launch wizard? And then everything got named Launch Wizard 1. It sort of feels like that a little bit. It's not quite that egregious, but it's up there.
Yeah, I mean, removing some of the visibility that you had linking between clusters and container versions and tasks and that, which that's really the cardinal sin for me, is that I don't think it's hidden. I think it's removed. I haven't, it's been a while since I've looked at it because I've given up on it entirely. I use ECS, but only through API and Terraform driven actions.
Well, if you're happy about that, maybe you'll be happier with the fact that ECS is going to now enable you to configure port ranges for your container as part of the port mapping. Port mapping, specified in the container definition, allows containers to access ports on the host container instance to send or receive traffic. In addition to individual ports, Amazon ECS now allows your application to access an entire range of ports that you select by opening these ports in the container for you and binding them to the ports on the host.
This is a long time coming.
Yeah, no, I was like, I think I requested this feature.
Yeah, it was like, what do you mean we have to open up every possible ephemeral port to this machine?
You can use this service, yeah. You just can't use it and have any kind of network security that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one person who uses Knackles will be very happy with this.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, if you like widgets for your homepage, Amazon has 2 new sets of widgets for you this week. The first up is new security widgets. You can add to your Amazon console to provide you a summary of your security posture generated by the security checks that you have enabled in your account using AWS Security Hub. So your security posture, key insights into security scores, and how many security controls have failed, and any critical findings in your account. And then you can explain to your CISO why it says your security controls are failing. That's not really what it means, but it is nice to have that quick dashboard view of it. And then if you are always wishing to have your systems manager widgets, that's also now here, where you can view the operational status as soon as you sign in, take necessary actions to remediate operational issues with a one-click access to AWS Systems Manager features. And you can view how many managed instances you have, the patch compliance, and the ops summary of issues on those instances, all from the widget. So there you go.
I mean, as much as I laugh at the widgets thing, like the Systems Manager widget is kind of what I wanted from the get-go in a lot of these changes, like being able to customize a lot of those views, especially if you do have sort of compute heavy workloads. It is kind of nice to not have to go digging for all of that and have it just be sort of something you see as you're logging in, something it just keeps it in front of you. Because that's where you see that you've got, a whole bunch of it, the inventory process isn't allowed to complete on a bunch of hosts, and you'll see that, it's not something you're necessarily going to alert on or want to page someone in the middle of the night, but you kind of want to know about it.
Agreed. Moving to GCP, the new control plane connectivity and isolation options are coming to your GKE clusters, starting with version 1.23 and later. All new public clusters created on or after March 15th, 2022 began using the Google Cloud PSC infrastructure to communicate between GK cluster control plane and nodes. The PSC provides a consistent framework that helps connect different networks through a service networking approach and allows service producers and consumers to communicate using private IP addresses internal to the VPC. This new capability allows several features, including allowing access to the control plane only via private endpoint, which, thank goodness, allowing toggling and mixed node clusters with public and private node pools, configure access from Google Cloud, and choose your private endpoint address so you'll now know where it is.
That's neat. And I find some irony in that the cloud providers have been pushing service mesh for such a long time, yet fail to implement it entirely for any of their own access to any of their own services. And so we end up with these, the private link thing for Amazon, and now we've got this offering from Google. And it's kind of like a tag-on thing, whereas really this could have been a strategy from the beginning. If we don't want to go egress out to the internet side of the network, why wasn't this always an option? Really, but it's certainly good now.
Well, in the Amazon case, like they invented all this, so I'm sort of like you get a pass because it's your original network for hyperscale. You're kind of living with some of your decisions you made a long time ago. But Google, you're right. Google didn't have to make that choice, and they could have adopted service mesh from day one, and they chose not to.
I think it's hard. I think because you're talking about an abstraction on top of an abstraction. So service mesh, you want to enable, as a feature or a service to your customers, but effectively that's what you're doing to route all this stuff under the covers, right? And so, I think I'm guessing a choice was made for Google where they were looking at it, and it was like, well, we could have this, but it's so foundational that it would have changed the roadmap. So I think that's part of it as well. But
yeah, could be. And our final main show story: Microsoft is finally the number one in a cloud thing, and that cloud thing is industrial IoT, which is pretty niche. Amazon was only a challenger on the new Magic Quadrant for global industrial IoT. Google, of course, wasn't on the list because they gave up on IoT. And that's all I have to say about it. Go number one.
Mm-hmm. Woo! Did they buy somebody to get to that place, or like? I don't know.
The only reason why I think really Microsoft would even be in the top leader spot of that is because they have all of the embedded Windows technology that's actually in the machines.
Oh, that's
what I was thinking too.
That is cheating.
Okay, Siemens is on the list too, and Siemens is other pretty big PLC controller. And they're in the visionary, almost crossing over into the leadership quadrant. So, definitely, there's some shenanigans, I'm sure, in this. I didn't even bother to go find the actual real Magic Quadrant to see what the pluses and minuses were. I didn't care enough, but I just thought it was funny for Microsoft. Close of the year is number one. It's something in cloud.
Not anything not a new feature, not an enhancement. A rating.
All right. Well, Peter's not here for the final lightning round. So technically, that means I won.
Oh, that means you win. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not going to score today, but
unless I am so funny.
Unless you're so funny today, Ryan, that we decided to give you multiple points. Yeah. But I do feel like this year was the best competition between the three of us because I think we all were on our game for most of the year. And I didn't feel like I ran away with it and had won the game by the summer. So I appreciate.
I do think I got a couple pity votes over the course of the year. I'll admit that, but I take my wins where I get them.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm surprised we only awarded 23 points this year when we recorded.
Well, that's just a testament to how little Peter was here this year.
I would comment, but those in glass houses too.
All right. Well, Ryan, I made you first for lightning round this week.
Yeah, excellent. Fortuna, an open source library for uncertainty quantification of ML models, is now available.
I'm Fortuna. I don't need to do this in my day job.
I don't need to quantify how I am uncertain about what this is.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Sorry, Jonathan, I stole yours. Jumped in on you fast.
I'm used to it. That's why you're winning. We don't want to steal the points.
All right. AWS Marketplace introduces free trials for SaaS usage-based pricing products.
Wow, we kept this in.
I was giving you a chance to have a joke. I was going to say, well, I can't wait to forget to turn off the Salesforce subscription that I had a trial on in my Amazon account. Now I'm paying $100,000 a month for Salesforce. That's what I was thinking. But sorry, that was my joke.
So the ChatGPT contribution, why did the expensive SaaS products give a free trial? So they could charge an arm and a leg later.
Very nice. Very nice.
See, I remember earlier I said they have sort of a pattern.
Yes.
Yeah. Dad jokes are written by
Why did the chicken cross the road? Generally available as your dedicated host restart.
I mean, it's Windows, right? It should have been the first feature.
Yeah. All you do is reboot that thing. I can't believe anything's ever worked on Windows.
Right.
Amazon ECS now integrates with Amazon CloudWatch alarms to improve safety for deployments.
No,
Unreliable deployments? Not on my watch.
I much prefer the idea of having a dev calling me at 3 a.m. because the deployment isn't working properly and it's failing. So why would I want to know the answer without having to troubleshoot for at least 2 hours on a call before I go to the console and just realize, oh, it's restarting every 5 seconds. Why would I want this?
I mean, my kingdom for the CloudWatch alarms not to be tied to like a useless CPU threshold for this. So it's like this isn't going to change the behavior of many deployments.
Right. What do you mean the process went to 100%? Well, it's booting up Java technically. So it's got to start instantiate. It's got to load data. It's got to do things. It's an error. Roll back. No.
Yeah.
Amazon EC2 Describe Images API now supports pagination.
I mean, it's a thing that I'm glad exists.
I mean, it was so hard to type in pipe more, and it was annoying when you do it, like because you just scroll your console for like, oh yeah, that's right, I gotta filter this down or pipe to more, and it worked just fine. That's what I did. That was my trick.
Unrelated or slightly related, but not funny, is I also saw that they are hiding images older than 2 years now too.
Oh, good.
So that people aren't constantly deploying these ancient versions of any OS.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, it is nice that they finally realized that there's a thing called pagination, though, and that people may be actually using a command line that isn't a computer that might need this. So I do appreciate the effort, but just 10 years too late.
I'm shocked.
Stunned. This is the innovation you get from Amazon these days. Stunned.
Yeah.
Pagination. And everyone goes, woo!
Yeah.
I actually kind of like the way Google ties images to projects. And so, there's a CentOS project, or there's a Debian project, or there's a different, and so you can very specifically just list out the images that you really care about. I know you can do it by account with AWS, but for public images, it's a bit of a crapshoot.
But the account construct in Amazon for image searching is not really well known. And if you don't go to Ubuntu's website and they say, hey, it's just filter by account.
Right.
That's not a thing people think about.
Yeah. And you can have duplicative, image names across multiple accounts.
Yep.
Right. So it's hard to enforce with the Amazon model.
Bring ML models built anywhere into Amazon SageMaker Canvas and generate predictions.
And this is how they're going to get ChatGPT into AWS. When Azure doesn't give those guys a good deal on Azure cloud hosting, they'll just move it to AWS through SageMaker Canvas. Perfect.
If you can't beat them, join them.
Mm-hmm.
AWS Gateway Load Balancer and Gateway Load Balancer Endpoint now support IPv6 traffic.
And I will still not support IPv6 in my brain. So appreciate it.
The good thing about IPv6 jokes is that you don't need the punchline for 15 years.
That's right. You also won't be able to remember it because it's too long.
Yeah.
That's fine. Well, that wraps up 2022, guys. It has been another fantastic year with all three of you. Well, two of you tonight, but three of you normally. And, I can't believe we're already at 193 episodes. We're so close to 200 episodes, and we haven't even talked about what we're going to do for 200. But, we wrote a blog post for 100.
The ChatGPT do the
we should have them write it. Yeah. It's been fun though. It's been another fantastic year. We did take a little more time off this year. I think next year we're going to try to focus down our topics a little bit. We're going to drop some of our, some of the early access and preview announcements, and we're going to focus mostly on the big ones. And we're probably going to talk a little bit more about some industry trends and things that we're seeing, and you'll hear more of our opinions about some of these things that are happening in the market, because If we had one more year of Azure just doing nothing, I don't know what we even keep covering Azure. But I think we have a much better conversation, and so I think we're gonna play with the show a little bit next year. We're gonna try some new things, and we'd love to hear from you. And this is a great time to pitch our Slack team, or if you don't want to be on Slack because you have too many Slack teams, which I have too many. I understand. You can find us on OG AWS or the FinOps Foundation. We're out there as well, or even on the Last Week in AWS Slack team. But we're also out on Twitter, of course, and then you can always just write us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We love that. I always love to see people post. I even saw someone on Reddit the other day mention our CloudPod podcast in a thread, unprompted by me, so that was always great. We love all of you. We hope you all have a great, happy holidays, and thank you for listening for another fantastic year.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, well said. Thank you.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.